Hello, my dear friend, and welcome back to Code Your English, the channel where we don't just learn English, we also learn how to live better, think smarter, and grow stronger in every part of our lives. I'm so glad you're here today, because this episode is about something that can truly change the direction of your life: being proactive. Now, that word might sound simple, but trust me, it's one of the most powerful habits you can ever build. So, let me ask you something right at the start. Are you someone who waits for things to happen, or someone who makes things happen? Think about it for a second. When something goes wrong, do you immediately blame circumstances, people, or luck? Or do you stop and ask yourself, okay, what can I do about it? That small difference between waiting and acting is the heart of being proactive. And that's exactly what we'll explore together in today's episode. In our daily lives, it's easy to get caught up in routines and forget how much control we actually have. We wake up, check our phones, rush through the day, and often feel like life is just happening to us. Maybe your boss gives you extra work. Maybe your teacher surprises you with a test, or maybe your plans fall apart. And in those moments, it's so tempting to say, well, what can I do? It's not my fault. But here's the truth. That's a reactive mindset. A proactive person sees the same situation and says, it's not ideal, but what's my next move? And that's the beauty of being proactive. It's not about controlling everything. It's about controlling yourself. It's about realizing that you always have a choice, even when things around you don't go as planned. You can't control the weather, but you can control your attitude. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can choose how you respond. That's what separates proactive people from the rest. In this episode, we're going to break this idea down step by step. First, we'll look at what proactivity really means and how it's different from reactivity. Then we'll explore the mindset behind it, what proactive people think and believe about themselves and life. We'll also talk about why so many of us struggle to be proactive, even when we want to, and what we can do about it. And of course, I'll share some real-life examples and practical tips you can start using today to become more proactive in your studies, your relationships, and your personal goals. But before we dive into all of that, I want you to reflect for a moment. When was the last time you felt stuck? Maybe you wanted to do something new, but you waited for the right time or for someone to push you. What if that right time never comes? What if the person you're waiting for is you? That's what being proactive is really about. Not waiting for life to hand you opportunities, but creating them yourself. So, as you listen to this episode, I want you to keep one simple idea in mind. You are not just a passenger in your own life. You're the driver. You get to decide where you're going, how fast you move, and what direction you take. And once you understand that, everything begins to change. Your confidence, your habits, your future. All right, let's get started. Take a deep breath, relax, and open your mind. Because by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand what proactivity really means, you'll also know how to bring it into your everyday life. This is Code Your English. And today, we're coding a new mindset. The mindset of action, growth, and responsibility. Let's dive in. Understanding proactivity. What does it really mean? All right, so now that we've set the mood and talked a little about why being proactive matters, let's take a closer look at what it actually means. Because honestly, many people have heard the word proactive, but not everyone really understands it. Some people think it's just about being busy or working hard all the time. Others believe it means being pushy, bossy, or always trying to control everything. But that's not what proactivity truly is. Being proactive means taking responsibility for your life. It means you don't just wait for things to happen. You take action before problems appear, and you try to create the results you want instead of waiting for them to come by chance. In simple words, proactive people don't just react to the world, they shape it. They focus on what they can do, what they can change, and what they can control. Let's compare this with the opposite, being reactive. A reactive person waits for something to happen first, and then they respond to it. Their actions depend on the situation, the weather, or other people's behavior. For example, imagine it's Monday morning. You wake up, and it's raining. A reactive person might say, "Ugh, it's raining again. Now my day is ruined." They let the rain decide their mood. But a proactive person says, "It's raining. Okay, I'll take an umbrella and leave a bit earlier." The situation is the same, but the attitude is completely different. The proactive person doesn't give the weather the power to control their day. Another example, think about studying or learning English. A reactive student might say, "I'll only study when I feel motivated," or "I'll practice speaking when I find someone to talk to." But a proactive student takes charge. They say, "I'll create a plan. I'll practice a few minutes every day, even when I don't feel like it." They don't wait for motivation. They build it through action. And that's why proactive learners improve faster. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They just start where they are. You can also see this difference in relationships. Imagine you have a misunderstanding with a friend. A reactive person might think, "If they don't text me first, I'm not going to text them." They wait for the other person to act. But a proactive person thinks, "Maybe they're busy or upset. Let me reach out and clear things up." They take initiative to solve the problem instead of waiting for it to fix itself. This kind of attitude doesn't just make you stronger. It makes your relationships healthier, your mind calmer, and your life smoother. Now, let's talk about what proactivity isn't, because this is where many people get confused. Being proactive doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean you have to control every detail or push others to do things your way. In fact, proactive people understand that some things are simply outside their control. They don't try to control other people's opinions, emotions, or decisions. Instead, they focus their time and energy on what's within their power, their own thoughts, their own choices, and their own actions. Let's take another example. Suppose your team at work is preparing for a big presentation, but one of your teammates isn't doing their part. A reactive person might complain and get frustrated. This always happens. People are so lazy, but a proactive person asks, "What can I do to help the team succeed anyway?" Maybe they take the initiative to communicate clearly, or organize a short meeting to make sure everyone's on track. They don't waste energy blaming. They use their energy to make things better. Proactivity is also deeply connected to emotional control. When you're proactive, you understand that your emotions don't have to control you. For example, if someone criticizes you, you can either react immediately, maybe get angry or defensive, or you can pause, breathe, and choose your response. That small pause is where proactivity lives. It's the space between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. And inside that space lies your power. You see, life gives us endless situations every single day. Traffic jams, delays, arguments, surprises. You can't control most of them, but you can control how you respond. That's the key difference between a reactive and proactive life. Reactive people let circumstances decide their happiness. Proactive people decide it for themselves. And here's something interesting. Proactive people aren't born that way. It's a learned skill, something anyone can develop. It starts with awareness. Once you realize how often you let outside events decide your mood or behavior, you can start changing that pattern. It's like programming your own mindset. And since this podcast is called Code Your English, you could say being proactive is like coding your life with better instructions. You're telling your brain, don't wait for perfect moments. Create them. Don't react to everything. Choose wisely. So, when you hear the word proactive, think of it as a mindset of choice. It's about choosing responsibility over excuses, action over waiting, and growth over comfort. It's not about being perfect or always in control. It's about doing your best with what you have, where you are, right now. As we move forward in this episode, I want you to keep asking yourself this: in what areas of my life am I being reactive? And how can I start being more proactive there? Because awareness is the first step toward change. Once you see the difference, you can start living it. One small, intentional action at a time. The mindset behind proactivity. Now that we understand what being proactive really means, let's go a little deeper into the mindset behind it. Because proactivity doesn't just start with what you do. It begins with how you think. Every action starts with a thought, and the difference between a proactive and a reactive person is found right there, in the way they think about life, responsibility, and control. Let's start with a simple truth. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. That idea might sound familiar, but it's one of the most powerful lessons you can ever learn. A reactive mindset is one that believes, I can't help it. It's not my fault. Things just happen to me. When someone has this mindset, they often feel powerless. If something goes wrong, they blame the weather, other people, or bad luck. They wait for life to get easier instead of learning to get stronger. On the other hand, a proactive mindset says, I can choose my response. I may not control everything around me, but I control myself. This is the mindset of growth, responsibility, and confidence. People who think like this understand that while life isn't always fair, they can still decide how to act, how to feel, and what to focus on. That's where their true power lies. This idea was beautifully explained by Stephen Covey in his famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said that between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom to choose. Think about that for a moment. Life throws something unexpected at you. A problem, an argument, a disappointment. And before you react, there's always a small space between the event and your reaction. That's the moment when you can pause, breathe, and decide. That tiny pause is where a proactive life begins. Let's make this more real with an example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic on the way to an important meeting. A reactive person might start shouting at other drivers, getting angry, and stressing about being late. They let frustration take over. A proactive person, however, uses that space to think, okay, I can't change the traffic, but maybe I can call ahead and let them know I'll be late. Or I can use this time to relax, breathe, or listen to something positive. The situation is the same, traffic, but the experience is completely different because of the mindset. When you start thinking proactively, you begin to realize how many times in a day your emotions and reactions depend on external things, like other people's opinions, small inconveniences, or unexpected events. A reactive person allows these things to control their day. A proactive person takes control back. They choose their response consciously. It doesn't mean they never feel angry, sad, or frustrated. It means they don't let those emotions control their next move. Stephen Covey called this focus the circle of influence and the circle of concern. Imagine two circles. The bigger one includes everything you're concerned about: global problems, politics, other people's behavior, or the past. The smaller one includes things you can influence: your habits, your actions, your words, your reactions. Reactive people spend most of their energy worrying about things in the outer circle, things they can't control. Proactive people focus on the inner circle, the things they can do something about. And here's the magic part. When you focus on your circle of influence, it starts to grow. You become stronger, calmer, and more capable of handling life. Let's take another simple example. Suppose you want to improve your English, but you keep saying, "I don't have time," or "My environment isn't good for learning." That's a reactive way of thinking. It focuses on what you can't control. A proactive mindset says, "Okay, I may not have much time, but I can still listen to podcasts while traveling. I can still learn a few new words every day." That shift from "I can't" to "I can" changes everything. Having a proactive mindset doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's not about toxic positivity. It's about responsibility. You take responsibility for your choices, your emotions, and your growth. You stop waiting for luck or perfect timing, and you start creating small, meaningful actions that move you forward. You understand that success is not built by chance. It's built by consistency, self-discipline, and mindset. Now, here's something to think about. When was the last time you blamed circumstances instead of taking action? Maybe you told yourself you couldn't start something because the situation wasn't right. Maybe you were too tired, too busy, or not ready yet. We all do that sometimes. But what if, instead of waiting for things to change, you decided to take the first step anyway? That's what proactive people do. They don't wait for life to become easy. They move even when it's difficult. Proactivity is a mindset that slowly changes how you see everything. You stop feeling like a victim of your environment and start feeling like the designer of your life. You realize that your thoughts, your words, and your actions create your results. You also become more peaceful because you stop wasting energy on things outside your control. When you focus on what you can do, life becomes lighter and clearer. So, the next time something doesn't go your way, maybe you fail a test, lose an opportunity, or face criticism. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what's inside my control right now? What can I do next? That's how a proactive person thinks. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. When you build this mindset, every challenge becomes a lesson. Every problem becomes a possibility. And every small decision becomes a chance to take control of your story. That's the real power of being proactive. It begins in your mind, and it transforms everything that follows. Why many people struggle to be proactive. So now that we've talked about what proactivity means and the mindset behind it, let's be honest. If being proactive is so powerful and helpful, why don't more people do it? Why is it so hard to take action, even when we know it's good for us? The truth is, everyone struggles with this at some point. We all have moments when we wait too long, hesitate too much, or let opportunities pass by. And that's okay. The goal here isn't to feel guilty about it. It's to understand why it happens, so we can learn to move forward with more awareness and courage. One of the biggest barriers to being proactive is fear of failure. We often hold ourselves back because we're afraid of not doing things perfectly or making mistakes. Think about it. How many times have you said, "What if it doesn't work?" Or, "What if I fail?" That small question, "What if?" can stop you from even starting. But here's something to remember. Proactive people fail too. The difference is that they see failure as part of learning, not as the end. They understand that every step, even a wrong one, moves them closer to understanding what works. Let me share a small, personal story. A few years ago, I wanted to start a new project, something creative and meaningful. I had the idea, I had the plan, but I kept waiting. I told myself, "I'll start when I feel ready," or "I just need to think it through a little more." Weeks passed, then months. One day, someone else started a similar project and became quite successful. I remember feeling frustrated, not because they succeeded, but because I realized that I could have done it too, if only I had acted earlier. That experience taught me something important. Waiting for the perfect moment often means missing the real one. Maybe you've felt the same. Have you ever told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready"? But that day never came. We wait for the right time, the right mood, the right situation. But the truth is, there's no perfect moment. The perfect moment is the one you choose to begin. Being proactive doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you act despite the fear. Another big reason people struggle to be proactive is perfectionism. We often believe that things have to be perfect before we can take action. The perfect plan, the perfect skills, the perfect confidence. But perfectionism is a trap. It creates endless waiting, endless planning, and very little doing. Perfectionism whispers, "You're not ready yet." And the more you listen, the further you get from your goal. Proactive people understand that progress is more important than perfection. They focus on getting started, not getting everything right. Then, there's lack of confidence. Many people don't act because they don't truly believe in themselves. They think, "I'm not good enough," or "Other people are smarter, stronger, or more talented." But confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Every time you do something small, even if it's scary, you build a little more trust in yourself. It's like training a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Proactivity grows from that same confidence. Another quiet barrier is waiting for motivation. This one is so common. We often say, "I'll do it when I feel motivated." But motivation doesn't always show up first. In fact, action often comes before motivation. You start doing something, and then you begin to feel motivated. It's like lighting a fire. You don't wait for warmth to start the flame. You start the flame to create warmth. Proactive people understand this. They don't wait to feel inspired. They start, and the inspiration comes later. Sometimes the struggle is also emotional. We've all had moments when we feel overwhelmed or uncertain. Life can feel too big, and taking action feels risky. It's natural to want to stay in your comfort zone, where things feel safe and familiar. But comfort zones, as cozy as they are, don't help us grow. Being proactive often means stepping into discomfort, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary for growth. It's also worth mentioning that our environment can shape our habits. If you grow up around people who constantly complain or blame others, you might unconsciously learn to do the same. Being proactive often requires breaking that pattern and thinking differently. It's not easy, but awareness is the first step. When you notice that you're falling into reactive habits, like waiting, blaming, or hesitating, that awareness alone is powerful. It means you're already one step closer to change. The important thing to remember is that everyone faces these struggles. Even the most proactive people have moments of doubt, fear, and hesitation. The difference is that they don't stay stuck there. They remind themselves that they have a choice to move, to act, to try again. You can do the same. The goal isn't to become perfectly proactive overnight. It's to take small, consistent steps toward taking more responsibility for your actions and your future. So, if you've been waiting to start something, maybe a new project, a fitness goal, or even improving your English, ask yourself honestly, what am I really waiting for? Is it the right time, or is it the right mindset? Because sometimes the only thing standing between where you are and where you want to be is that tiny step you keep delaying. Remember, awareness is not about guilt. It's about growth. Recognizing your fears, your perfectionism, or your waiting habit doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And once you see those patterns clearly, you can start changing them. Little by little, choice by choice, you can build a life that's not just reactive, but truly proactive. One where you're not waiting for life to happen, but creating it yourself. The power of taking initiative. Now that we understand why people struggle to be proactive, let's talk about what happens when you finally decide to take action. When you stop waiting and start doing. This is where the real magic begins, because being proactive isn't just about big, dramatic moves. It's about taking initiative, even in small ways. And the truth is, those small actions, the ones that seem almost too simple, often create the biggest results over time. Taking initiative means you don't wait for permission, perfect timing, or someone else to go first. You decide to act, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you don't have everything figured out. It's that small inner voice that says, "I'll try," instead of "maybe later." And here's the beautiful part. When you start taking initiative, your life slowly begins to change. Not all at once, but step by step, moment by moment. Let's make this idea real with an example. Imagine you want to learn English fluently. You tell yourself you'll start when you have more free time, or when you feel ready. Weeks go by, then months, and you still haven't started. But one day, you decide to take initiative. You listen to a short podcast, read a few sentences, or practice speaking for just 10 minutes a day. At first, it feels small, maybe even useless. But if you keep doing it every single day, one day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. That's the quiet power of initiative. It's not about doing everything, it's about doing something. It's the same with any other area of life. Starting a side project, applying for a job, or building a new friendship. Let's say you've always wanted to start a small online business, but you keep waiting to feel ready. You tell yourself, "I need more experience," or "I'll start when things calm down." But that perfect time never arrives. Then one day, you take the first step. Maybe you research, design a simple plan, or talk to someone who's done it before. Suddenly, things start moving. You begin to see opportunities you never noticed before, and you realize that the hardest part was not the work itself. It was starting. Taking initiative doesn't always mean taking big leaps. Sometimes it's something as simple as sending the first message to reconnect with a friend you haven't spoken to in years, or volunteering to help with a small project at work, or choosing to wake up 10 minutes earlier to plan your day. Each of these small decisions builds momentum. And momentum is what keeps you moving when motivation fades. Because motivation comes and goes. But momentum, that steady movement forward, is what turns small efforts into big results. A proactive person understands this. They don't wait for a perfect plan. They start with what they have. Maybe they don't know all the answers yet, but they know that action brings clarity. Every time you act, you learn something new. Every step, even a small one, gives you feedback, builds your confidence, and makes the next step easier. There's a saying that I love. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. That's exactly what taking initiative is about. You might not know where your path will lead, and that's okay. You don't need to know everything to begin. You just need to begin. Over time, those steps connect, and what once felt impossible starts to feel natural. Let's also clear up a common misunderstanding. Being proactive and taking initiative doesn't mean doing everything. It's not about overloading yourself or trying to control every situation. In fact, proactive people are usually quite smart about their energy. They focus on doing something meaningful, not everything possible. They understand that progress is about direction, not speed. You don't have to move fast, you just have to keep moving in the right direction. For example, if your goal is to improve your English, you don't need to study 5 hours a day. Even 15 minutes of focused practice can make a big difference if you do it consistently. If you want to build better relationships, you don't need to meet everyone, just reach out to one person and make that connection meaningful. Small, thoughtful actions done regularly are much more powerful than rare, perfect actions done occasionally. And here's another truth. Taking initiative builds confidence. When you act, even in small ways, you start proving to yourself that you're capable. You stop seeing yourself as someone who just reacts to life, and you start seeing yourself as someone who shapes it. That's an incredible feeling. You begin to trust your own decisions, and that trust gives you courage to do even more. Think of any successful person you admire. In business, education, art, or life. None of them got where they are by waiting for things to happen. They took initiative. They started when things were uncertain, when they didn't have all the answers. They failed, learned, and kept going. Their success wasn't built in one big moment. It was built in many small, consistent actions. So, let me ask you, what's one small step you've been thinking about taking, but haven't yet? Maybe it's starting a course, sending an email, or even waking up earlier to work on your goals. What's stopping you from doing it today? Not perfectly, but simply starting. Because once you take that first step, something shifts inside you. You feel a little stronger, a little braver, and a lot more in control. Remember this. Being proactive doesn't mean doing everything. It means doing something that moves you forward. Even if it's small, it still counts. Progress is not about perfection. It's about persistence. The people who succeed are not always the fastest or the most talented. They're the ones who keep showing up, who take initiative again and again, even when it's hard. So, as you think about your own life, ask yourself, where can I take initiative today? It doesn't have to be big. Just one small, intentional action. Because that's how every great change begins. Not with a giant leap, but with a single, brave step in the right direction. How can you be more proactive? Now that we understand what proactivity means and why it matters, let's talk about how you can actually become more proactive in your daily life. Being proactive is not something that happens overnight. It's a mindset, a set of habits, and a way of thinking that you develop little by little. The good news is that anyone can learn it. You don't need to be born confident or organized. You just need to start practicing simple habits that make you more in control of your actions and choices. So let's explore some practical, easy-to-understand tips that can help you become more proactive every single day. The first tip is to think ahead. Proactive people don't just live in the moment. They also think about what might happen next. This doesn't mean worrying about the future or trying to predict everything. It simply means being a step ahead. For example, if you have an important meeting tomorrow, you prepare your notes tonight. If you know exams are coming, you start studying a little earlier, instead of waiting until the last night. Thinking ahead helps you prevent problems before they happen. It's like checking the weather before going out. You take an umbrella if it might rain. This small habit saves time, energy, and stress later. When you train your mind to look forward, you start to see patterns. You begin to notice that many problems can be avoided just by planning a little earlier. Thinking ahead doesn't require big plans. It starts with small moments of awareness and preparation. The second tip is to take responsibility. This is one of the most powerful steps toward becoming truly proactive. Taking responsibility means accepting that you are in charge of your choices and reactions. It's easy to blame others, your boss, your teacher, your friends, or even bad luck when things don't go well. But when you blame, you give away your power. You become reactive. Proactive people do the opposite. They focus on what they can control. If something goes wrong, they ask, "What can I learn from this?" Or, "What can I do differently next time?" Instead of saying, "It's not my fault," they say, "It's my opportunity to grow." Taking responsibility doesn't mean you must control everything or feel guilty about mistakes. It means owning your part and using it as a chance to improve. Once you stop waiting for others to fix your problems, you begin to see how much power you really have to change your life. The third tip is to make small plans. Many people think being proactive means making big, detailed plans for the whole year. But that's not always necessary. In fact, big plans often make people feel overwhelmed and anxious. The key is to start small. Plan your day, your week, or even just your next few hours. For example, you could write down 3 important things you want to do today. Or if you're learning English, plan that you'll listen to a short podcast, review 5 new words, and speak for 10 minutes. When you make small, realistic plans, you build consistency. You also feel more confident because you see progress every day. Small plans are flexible. If something changes, you can easily adjust. Over time, these small plans create big results. Remember, success doesn't come from giant steps. It comes from many small steps taken consistently in the right direction. The fourth tip is to solve problems early. Many people delay action because they hope small problems will disappear by themselves. But most of the time, small problems grow bigger when you ignore them. Being proactive means dealing with issues before they become crises. Imagine you notice a small misunderstanding with a friend. You can talk about it early instead of waiting until it turns into a bigger argument. Or maybe you're behind on a project. You can ask for help now instead of waiting until the deadline. Solving problems early saves energy and reduces stress. It also builds trust because people see you as someone who takes initiative and cares about solutions. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to face a problem, but avoiding it is always worse in the long run. So when something feels wrong, act early. Ask questions, fix small mistakes, and find simple ways to handle things before they grow out of control. The fifth and final tip is to stay positive and take action. This might sound simple, but it's one of the hardest and most important parts of being proactive. A positive mindset doesn't mean ignoring difficulties. It means believing that you can handle them. When things go wrong, a reactive person says, "Why does this always happen to me?" But a proactive person says, "Okay, "This is hard, but I can do something about it." That attitude changes everything. It gives you energy to act. Taking action is where real change happens. Thinking and planning are important, but without action, nothing moves. Even if you feel unsure, take a small step. Send that message, start that lesson, or begin that task. The more you act, the more confident and capable you become. Staying positive helps you see possibilities instead of problems, and taking action turns those possibilities into reality. To put all of this together, remember that proactivity is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's about thinking ahead, taking responsibility, making small but meaningful plans, solving problems early, and staying positive even when life feels uncertain. You don't have to change everything overnight. You just have to take one small intentional step every day. Each time you do, you'll feel more in control of your life, more confident in your abilities, and more capable of shaping your own future. So, ask yourself, which of these 5 tips can you start practicing today? Maybe it's thinking ahead for tomorrow's tasks, or maybe it's finally taking responsibility for something you've been avoiding. Whichever one you choose, start now. Because being proactive begins not with perfect plans, but with one simple, brave decision to act. The emotional benefits of being proactive. When we think about being proactive, we often focus on action, planning, problem-solving, and taking responsibility. But there's another side of proactivity that's just as powerful and maybe even more important: the emotional side. When you start living proactively, you don't just become more productive, you also become calmer, more confident, and more at peace with yourself. You begin to feel a quiet kind of strength inside you, the kind that says, "Whatever happens, I can handle it." And that feeling is one of the greatest emotional benefits of being proactive. Let's begin with self-trust. Every time you take initiative, even in small ways, you build trust in yourself. You start to believe that your actions matter, that you can rely on your own choices. Think about it. When you promise yourself something and actually do it, you prove to yourself that your word has value. Maybe you said you'd wake up early to study English for 10 minutes, and you did. Maybe you decided to send that job application instead of waiting. Those moments, though small, build a stronger relationship between you and you. Self-trust doesn't grow from talking about change. It grows from doing something and keeping your own promises. Over time, this trust becomes the foundation of your confidence. You stop doubting yourself so much because you've seen what you're capable of when you act. Another beautiful emotional benefit of being proactive is confidence. Confidence isn't about thinking you'll never fail. It's about knowing that even if you do fail, you'll figure it out. Reactive people often wait for confidence before they start. They think, "I'll do it when I feel ready." But proactive people understand that confidence comes after taking action, not before it. When you take initiative, even when you're unsure, you send a message to your brain that says, "I can handle this." Each action adds another piece to your confidence puzzle. Over time, you start to feel more capable in every part of your life. At work, in relationships, or while learning something new. You realize that you don't need perfect conditions or perfect timing. You just need courage to begin. And then there's peace of mind. One of the quietest yet most powerful results of being proactive. When you act, plan, or prepare, you remove a lot of unnecessary worry. Most anxiety comes from thinking about things we can't control: other people's opinions, the weather, the economy, or luck. But when you're proactive, Your focus shifts from what you can't control to what you can. And that shift brings calm. For example, instead of stressing about an exam result, a proactive student focuses on studying well. Instead of worrying about whether people will like them, a proactive person focuses on being kind and genuine. You stop wasting emotional energy on things outside your circle of control, and that creates space in your mind for peace, clarity, and balance. I remember a time when I was struggling with a personal project, something I had wanted to do for months but kept postponing because I was afraid it wouldn't be perfect. I kept telling myself, I'll start when I have more time, or I'll do it when I feel more ready. Of course, that ready day never came. One morning, I just got tired of feeling stuck, so I opened my laptop and started. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That small act, taking initiative instead of waiting, gave me a rush of pride and relief. It wasn't just about completing something. It was about freeing myself from hesitation. I realized that action is powerful not just because of what it achieves, but because of how it makes you feel inside. That day, I didn't just make progress on my project. I regained my confidence. That's the emotional magic of being proactive. It gives you a sense of freedom. Freedom from constant doubt, fear, and waiting. You start to realize that your emotions are not controlling you. You are guiding them. Even when life throws surprises your way, you stay grounded because you know how to respond. You become calmer in chaos and stronger in uncertainty. That emotional balance changes the way you move through the world. You begin to feel lighter, more centered, and more in charge of your own happiness. Now, I want you to think about this. What would your life feel like if you focused only on what you could control? What if, instead of worrying about everything that could go wrong, you spent your energy on what you can actually do? Imagine how much more peaceful and focused you'd feel. Imagine how much mental space you'd free up for creativity, growth, and joy. When you practice proactivity, you also start experiencing more emotional stability. You stop reacting to every little problem like it's a crisis. You learn to pause, breathe, and respond calmly. That's because proactive people develop emotional strength through repeated action. Each small decision to act trains your brain to stay calm under pressure. And that's something no one can take away from you. So, the next time you feel anxious, uncertain, or stuck, remember this. The first step toward peace is action. You don't have to solve everything at once. Just do the next right thing that's within your control. Each time you do, you'll feel a little more confident, a little more peaceful, and a lot more free. That's what emotional growth through proactivity looks like. Less fear, more calm, less waiting, more doing, less doubt, more self-trust. The more you practice this, the stronger your emotional foundation becomes. And soon, you'll find that being proactive isn't just something you do. It's part of who you are. Daily habits of proactive people. If you really want to understand what it means to live proactively, you have to look at it in action. Not in big moments, but in the small habits that shape your day. Because being proactive isn't something you do once in a while when life gets difficult. It's something you practice every day, in simple, ordinary moments, when you plan your time, make decisions, or choose how to respond to challenges. Proactive people don't just talk about responsibility. They live it. They don't wait for motivation to appear. They build habits that create motivation naturally. So, let's look at some daily habits that proactive people use to stay focused, calm, and in control. Habits you can start building today. The first and most powerful habit is planning your day instead of reacting to it. Most people wake up, check their phones, and immediately start reacting to messages, notifications, emails, or other people's problems. When you start your day this way, you're already letting the world decide your priorities. Proactive people do the opposite. They plan their day before it starts. It doesn't have to be complicated. Even 5 minutes of quiet planning can make a huge difference. You can ask yourself, what are the 3 most important things I need to do today? And write them down. That small act of planning helps you take the driver's seat of your day instead of being a passenger. When you know your goals, you make better decisions and you feel less stressed because you're leading your day with intention, not reaction. The second habit is setting goals and reviewing them weekly. Proactive people don't just think about today. They think about where they want to be next month or next year. Having clear goals gives direction to your energy and actions. For example, if your goal is to improve your English, you might decide to listen to 1 podcast a day, write short reflections, or speak with a partner 3 times a week. The key is not just setting goals, but reviewing them. Every week, take a few minutes to ask yourself, what went well? What didn't? What can I improve? This simple reflection keeps you aware and motivated. It's like checking a map during a long journey. You make sure you're still heading in the right direction. Goals give you clarity, and regular reviews give you progress. That's how proactive people stay consistent and confident even when things get busy. The third habit is saying no to distractions. In today's world, this one is tough. Our phones, social media, and endless notifications make it hard to focus. But proactive people understand that every yes to a distraction is a no to something important. They learn to protect their time and attention. Sometimes that means turning off your phone for an hour, closing unnecessary tabs, or setting boundaries with people who constantly interrupt your focus. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's essential. You can't move forward if you're always pulled in different directions. Being proactive means knowing your priorities and having the courage to say no when something doesn't align with them. It's not about being rude, it's about stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility for your focus and energy. The fourth habit is taking responsibility for your emotions and choices. This one is deeper and more emotional, but it's what truly separates proactive people from reactive ones. Life is full of stressful situations. Maybe someone criticizes you, maybe you face rejection, or maybe things just don't go your way. Reactive people let their emotions control their actions. They get angry, upset, or give up. Proactive people, on the other hand, understand that emotions are real, but they don't have to rule your behavior. They pause, breathe, and respond instead of reacting. For example, if someone says something rude, a proactive person doesn't immediately argue. They might think, is it really worth my energy? Or, how can I respond calmly? Taking responsibility for your emotions doesn't mean you ignore them. It means you manage them wisely. It's about emotional maturity, the ability to choose your reaction instead of letting your emotions choose it for you. The fifth and final habit is acting even when you don't feel like it. Proactive people understand that motivation is not a feeling that magically appears. It's something you create through action. There will be days when you feel lazy, tired, or discouraged. We all have them. But the secret to consistency is not waiting for the perfect mood. It's doing small things even when you don't feel ready. You might tell yourself, I'll just start for 5 minutes. And once you begin, your energy usually follows. This habit of starting, even with small steps, builds discipline and keeps momentum alive. Remember, perfection is not the goal. progress is. Each small step you take builds a proactive mindset. And each time you act despite excuses, you strengthen your self-control. Now, here's a little challenge for you. This week, try to adopt just one proactive habit. Maybe you'll plan your day before checking your phone. Maybe you'll review your weekly goals every Sunday. Or maybe you'll say no to one distraction that usually steals your time. Choose something simple and doable. The goal is not to change your whole routine overnight, but to take one conscious step toward living more intentionally. Being proactive isn't about being busy all the time. It's about being in charge of your time, your focus, and your emotions. It's about realizing that life doesn't just happen to you, it happens through you, based on the choices you make. So, as you move through this week, remember to take the driver's seat of your own life. Plan ahead, protect your focus, manage your emotions, and act with purpose. Because once you start building these habits, you'll notice something amazing. You'll feel calmer, more confident, and more capable of handling whatever life brings your way. So, what's your first proactive habit going to be? Common misconceptions and balance. When people first hear the word proactive, they often imagine someone who's always busy, constantly planning, taking charge, and doing something every minute of the day. But here's the truth. Being proactive is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's not about working non-stop or trying to control everything and everyone around you. It's about having a healthy balance, knowing when to take action and when to pause, when to push forward and when to rest. In other words, true proactivity is not about speed or control. It's about wisdom and balance. Let's start by clearing up a very common misconception. Many people think that proactive individuals are workaholics, people who can't relax, or who always want to be in charge. But that's not what proactivity means at all. A proactive person doesn't act out of stress or fear. They act out of intention. They don't feel the need to do everything. They focus on what's truly important. For example, a proactive student doesn't study every single hour. They study smartly and consistently, and they also make time for rest. A proactive employee doesn't try to control their team. They communicate, delegate, and trust others. Being proactive is about making thoughtful choices. Sometimes the most proactive decision you can make is to stop, rest, and recharge your energy so you can perform better later. This idea leads to something many people forget: balance. True proactivity means finding a rhythm that works for you. Not too fast, not too slow. It's like driving a car. If you keep pressing the accelerator without ever slowing down, you'll eventually burn out. But if you're too afraid to move, you'll never reach your destination. A proactive mindset is like being a skilled driver. You know when to speed up and when to take a break. You don't let life push you around, but you also don't push yourself to the edge. You understand that rest is not laziness. It's part of the process. Proactive people know that their energy, focus, and motivation need care, just like a battery needs charging. Another common misunderstanding is that being proactive means trying to control everything, every event, every person, every outcome. But the truth is, no one can control everything. Life is unpredictable. Things will go wrong, people will disappoint you, and plans will change. Proactive people don't waste time fighting what they can't control. They focus on what they can. That's what makes them effective and peaceful at the same time. They prepare for the unexpected, adapt quickly, and stay flexible. They know that being proactive is not about being rigid. It's about being ready. You might not be able to control the wind, but you can always adjust your sails. It's also important to remember that proactive people plan not just for productivity, but for recovery. They understand that rest, reflection, and fun are not rewards. They're necessities. You can't give your best if you're exhausted or mentally drained. So proactive people include rest in their schedule. They take short breaks during work, get enough sleep, and do activities that refresh their minds, like spending time with loved ones, reading, or simply going for a walk. They know that creativity and clarity often come during quiet moments, not just during busy ones. It's all about maintaining your energy, not just using it. There's also a fascinating cultural side to this discussion. Different cultures view initiative and responsibility in unique ways. For example, in many Western cultures, like the United States or the UK, being proactive is often linked to independence and self-leadership. People are encouraged to take initiative, speak up, and make things happen. In many Eastern cultures, such as Japan or Korea, proactivity is also valued, but it's often expressed more through harmony, preparation, and collective responsibility. Instead of standing out, people focus on contributing to the group's success. And in many developing countries, taking initiative can sometimes be seen as risky because people fear making mistakes or being judged. But no matter where you're from, the essence of proactivity is the same. It's about taking responsibility for your choices and shaping your future instead of waiting for others to shape it for you. That's why balance is key, because proactivity looks a little different in every person and every culture. For one person, it might mean setting boundaries and learning to say no. For another, it might mean speaking up with confidence or starting a new project without waiting for permission. What matters most is not how much you do, but why you do it. When your actions come from awareness and purpose, you are being proactive, even if what you choose to do is rest, think, or simply say, "I'll handle this calmly." Think about this for a moment. Are you taking control of your life, or are you trying to control everything in it? There's a big difference. Taking control means leading yourself wisely, planning, acting, and taking responsibility for your choices. Trying to control everything means fighting reality, forcing things that aren't meant to be forced, and exhausting yourself in the process. One brings peace, the other brings stress. So, the next time you hear the word proactive, remember, it's not about running faster, doing more, or being perfect. It's about living intentionally, staying balanced, and focusing on what truly matters. It's about understanding that rest is part of growth, that flexibility is strength, and that your job is not to control the world. It's to manage your choices within it. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing about being proactive. It teaches you to act with purpose and to rest with peace. It reminds you that the most powerful people are not those who do everything, but those who know when to move, when to pause, and how to stay calm through both. As we come to the end of today's conversation, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored about proactivity. We've seen that being proactive is much more than just taking action or staying busy. It's a mindset, a way of thinking that shapes how you approach life. It's about choosing to focus on what you can control, making thoughtful decisions, and responding to challenges with intention instead of fear or habit. It's also a practice, something you build through daily habits, small steps, and consistent effort. And ultimately, it's a way of living, a path that allows you to guide your life rather than simply reacting to it. When you embrace proactivity, you give yourself the power to shape your experiences, manage your emotions, and move toward the goals that truly matter to you. One of the most important points we discussed is that proactivity doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean doing everything at once, having flawless plans, or never making mistakes. Proactive people understand that progress comes from consistent, meaningful action, not from waiting for the perfect moment. The truth is, perfect conditions rarely exist. Life is full of uncertainty, unexpected challenges, and imperfect circumstances. And yet, the people who move forward are not the ones who wait. They're the ones who start anyway. They take action, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, because they understand that each step builds momentum, confidence, and clarity. This is one of the most powerful lessons of proactivity. You don't need perfect conditions to begin. You just need the courage to take the first step. Reflect for a moment on your own life. How often have you delayed starting something because you felt unprepared, unsure, or waiting for the right moment? Maybe it was learning a new skill, reaching out to someone, or simply taking care of a task that had been on your mind. The truth is, that right moment may never come, and by waiting, you give away your power to circumstances, to fear, and to indecision. Proactive living is about reclaiming that power. It's about saying, I may not have everything figured out, but I can take one step today. That single step, no matter how small, is what starts change. It's what separates people who feel stuck from those who feel capable and in control of their lives. Another important takeaway is that proactivity is deeply tied to your emotional well-being. By focusing on what you can control, taking responsibility for your choices, and acting intentionally, you reduce anxiety and self-doubt. You build trust in yourself, confidence in your abilities, and a sense of peace knowing that you are moving in the right direction. It's not about avoiding challenges or pretending life is easy. It's about facing challenges with a sense of agency. When you act proactively, even small actions help you feel less overwhelmed and more capable of handling whatever comes your way. It's a quiet strength that grows each time you make a conscious decision to act instead of wait. Now, here's a reflective question to leave with you. What's one small action you could take today to make your life better tomorrow? It could be something as simple as sending an email you've been postponing, practicing a skill for 10 minutes, planning your day before checking your phone, or even just taking a moment to think about what matters most. The action doesn't have to be huge. It just needs to be intentional. Each small step matters. Each small decision moves you closer to the life you want to create. Over time, these actions accumulate, and before you know it, you've built a life that reflects your choices, your priorities, and your values. As we finish this episode, I want to encourage you to carry one simple intention with you. Be mindful of the choices you make, even in small moments. Look for ways to act instead of waiting, to plan instead of reacting, and to focus on what you can control rather than worrying about what you can't. Proactivity is not a one-time act. It's a daily practice. It's about building habits, taking small steps, and learning to trust yourself along the way. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, until taking initiative and acting with purpose feels like second nature. So, as you go through the rest of your day or the rest of your week, I invite you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what's one thing I can do right now, however small, that moves me forward? Take that action. Feel the difference it makes. Reflect on the control and confidence it brings. And remember, every small step adds up to meaningful change. Thank you for joining me today on Code Your English. Keep practicing, keep reflecting, and keep taking small, proactive steps every day. Life becomes richer, calmer, and more empowering when you choose to live with intention. And the journey starts with that very first step. Proactivity is yours to practice, yours to shape, and yours to live.